Life is for living now. Life is for living now, and then we die. So why not celebrate it? Why not celebrate all of life? Let's move away from mourning and grieving today and celebrate living and celebrate dying, celebrate those who have been with us in this human experience and those who have returned to their spiritual being that they always have been, that all of us are and all of us will be. So today we celebrate Dios de los Muertos, the Mexican custom, the Day of the Dead, and it's celebrated on the 1st and 2nd in November. And it originally is primarily observed in Mexico and other places that have people of Mexican heritage there. And it's 2 days, and I understand that traditionally on the first day, children it's used to celebrate children because children are much faster than adults getting back from wherever they are and coming back to visit with us. But the children can scamper forward and cluster and have a good time with us. And so the first day is to celebrate children. And then the adults come moseying along to be with us during the second day of Dias de los Muertos. Although it's associated with Catholic celebrations of All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day, it certainly has a much less solemn tone. It's portrayed as a holiday of joyful celebration rather than mourning. And the multi-day holiday involves family and friends gathering to pay respects or remember friends and family members who have died. And what I like about it is that these celebrations can take on a humorous tone as celebrants remember funny events and anecdotes about the departed. And traditions connected with Dias de los Muertos to honor the deceased. And I know that you've had, a couple years ago, Mrs. Duffy, I think, brought a Day of the Dead celebration through Women in Spirit. But let's just have a little review because I'm thinking that you probably don't keep all of the details of what Dias de los Muertos is in your head. It's a holiday honoring the deceased using calaveras or skulls. And you see, I have my altar set up behind me back here. So skulls and Aztec marigold flowers known as cempasúchil. Building of home altars called ofrendas. My Spanish is terrible when I'm in public. Ofrendas. And with the favored foods and beverages of the departed. It also includes visiting graves with these items as gifts for the deceased. So I've set some things up here as gift for the deceased that I'm honoring today. And I'm honoring Sal Dolor. Sal Dolor is a friend of mine that made his transition back in the 90s. But I'll tell you more about Sal in a little bit. The celebration is not solely focused on the dead, though. It's also common to give gifts to friends, such as candy sugar skulls, or to share a pan de muerto, or cake of the dead, with family and friends, and to write lighthearted and often irreverent verses in the form of mock epitaphs dedicated to living friends and acquaintances, known as calaveras literarias. Sounds almost Latin. My Spanish is terrible today. So, but even with all that, I want to assure you the Day of the Dead is not Mexican Halloween. It's not Mexican Halloween, so don't get it confused with that. Contrary to what's often portrayed in popular culture, the Day of the Dead is not Mexico's version of Halloween. Even though they fall around the same time of the year and have similarities, the two are different holidays and separate origins and unique traditions. Halloween, as you might recall, had its origins in the Celtic Harvest Festival, while Day of the Dead is rooted in the ancient religious traditions of Mesoamerica's indigenous population. So the tradition of Dias de los Muertos goes back for a long time in the indigenous population. And Halloween is from the Celtic Harvest Festival. Halloween, as it's practiced today, involves trick-or-treating, wearing costumes and decorating pumpkins. Day of the Dead traditions involve none of these things. And Halloween spirits are seen as scary or something to be warded off. And Day of the Dead focused on receiving the souls of dead relatives with joy and hospitality. Day of the Dead is a rare holiday for celebrating death and life. It's unlike any other holiday where mourning is exchanged for celebration. Day of the Dead is a holiday to remember loved ones by sharing a meal with them as one would have when they were alive. All in all, Day of the Dead is a way of maintaining a healthy and intimate relationship with the unknown, and is not only an occasion for festivities, but also for a profound recollection of those who died and an invitation to reflect on life and death. So how do we do that? Well, we go to the grave sites of those who have passed, but before then, we might build an altar at home, depending on what we want to celebrate. And I've just brought lots of things together, and it was so much fun bringing them all together. I have a kente cloth that I won at Unity of Seattle, and my shawl, my stole, the back side of it is black with the beautiful Unity logo on it. And I've got marigolds and chrysanthemums. I've got a daisy from the Van Gogh Festival, and the Korean god of laughter with some of the leis that my sister gave me, the kukui nut leis. And I've also brought some bananas from my friend Sal. And if you can see this handsome gentleman, this, let me see here, is Sal Dolor, and I didn't want to interrupt by putting up, doing a screen share. But Sal Dolor was a friend of mine. He was a best friend, and I have a funny story to tell you about Sal Dolor, about his ashes. Isn't it funny to tell a funny story about his ashes? But anyway. Besides that, let me tell you a little bit about Sal Dolor. Now, Sal Dolor was a crazy kind of Italian fellow. Thought he was quite charming. I don't know. Let me bring this picture up a little bit more so you can see him. He is quite charming. Here he is, all duded up, thinking he's going to be in a commercial. And handsome Italian guy, very, very fun. He was a gay man, and you know, it was not surprising if you were walking down the street in San Francisco, down Geary Street with Sal Dolor, and a handsome man was walking towards Sal, and he found him handsome. It was not surprising that Sal would shortly thereafter bark at the guy. Ruff, ruff. And the man would turn around and look, and Sal would wink at him and keep on going. And this left you, the person walking next to Sal, feeling a little strange that your friend had just barked at a man walking up the street and then winked at him and kept on going. But that was Sal Dolor. You never knew what Sal Dolor was going to do. Sal Dolor was, Sal Dolor was at my house for a holiday dinner along with Bob McAvoy. And Sal Dolor had said on the phone, well, you don't have to worry about the dishes after the holiday dinner. I'll take care of the dishes. And, you know, of course, you know how you are. Well, you don't have to, but in your mind, you're going, please do the dishes after the holiday dinner. So we finished this wonderful meal, and Sal said, I'll take care of the dishes. And he went over to his knapsack and he pulled out his rubber gloves. So you always have to bring rubber gloves with you if you're going to do the dishes. You just don't want anything happening to your hands. So there was Sal Dolor in my kitchen doing the dishes with the rubber gloves that he had brought. Well, so many funny stories about Sal, but you know, Sal did contract AIDS in the first wave of the epidemic, and sustained the disease for several years on antivirals, but then he did make his transition, and I was left in charge of him and what was going to be done with him. And Sal had, well, I have to tell you that Sal had met with me prior to dying, about a year prior, and gave me explicit instructions about his funeral service, explicit instructions that he was going to be cremated and that he wanted the service held at Grace Cathedral, which is where he attended. And he wanted it in this chapel. And he wanted lots of incense. And he wanted 3 calla lilies tied with green ribbon, and that I would walk in behind the priest carrying his ashes, and his mother would carry these 3 lilies in, and we would place the hymn on the altar, and then the service would go on. And that, what else I want you to know about Sal is that he worked at the San Francisco Examiner, and he was the purchasing agent, and he sat right outside of William Randolph Hearst Jr.'s office. And they were good buddies. And so William Randolph Hearst was tapped to do Sal's eulogy at his memorial service. So it was quite wonderful. And I was a bit nervous in the early 90s, having to meet with William Randolph Hearst to plan Sal's funeral. But it was fun, and Will is a great guy, and he adored Sal. He knew what a character Sal was. And so Sal was giving me all these directions about William Randolph Hearst and everything else. And he also brought over and wanted me to have them now while he was still alive, some of his proudest possessions. One was a copy of the biography of Diana Ross. Second was a book on how to enjoy life as a stewardess. And a few more items, but it was a touching time to have him share these about a year before he passed away. And so I had these and was with Sal for 2 days, stayed with him as he was making his transition, and his mother was there, and he was in a big house in San Francisco surrounded by all kind of friends, and Sal made his transition, and we took care of that business and sent him off to wherever we sent him off. And it was time for the funeral, and they called to say that his ashes were ready. And so I called Bob McAvoy and said, Bob, Sal's ashes are ready down on North Beach. Will you go with me to pick up the ashes? And he said, okay, but I don't know if he said this or not, but I remember, but I'm not coming in with you to get them. You have to go in and get them. So I went in and got Sal's ashes, I believe. I don't know if I'm remembering this quite correct. Oh, I am remembering it correct. All right, there's Bob McAvoy. And I got them and came out, and Bob McAvoy said, I think we better have a drink. And I said, I think we better have a drink too. And so I'm sort of improvising this version, McAvoy. And we were in North Beach, right by the Buena Vista Cafe. You're all from this area. Everybody knows the best Irish coffee and that you can get, and right there looking out. And so we had Sal with us, and he's in a box, and it's a red box, and I've got him under my arm, and I've got Bob McAvoy on the other side, and we go in the Buena Vista Cafe, and it's 5 o'clock in the evening. The Buena Vista Cafe is packed, and we sit down. We got a table, surprisingly, and we sat down. Well, we didn't just have one drink, we had 2. We decided Sal was worth 2, and we toasted him, and the place was filling up, and 2 drinks was about all that McAvoy and I could handle, and decided we'd best go home. We go and we walk over to the parking garage, and we get in the car, and we're about to pull out, and Bob McAvoy says to me, where's Sal? And I said, oh, Sal's still at the Buena Vista Cafe. Oh my God. So I had to get out of the car and run back over from the parking garage to the Buena Vista Cafe. And there's Sal sitting at the same table with a whole new group of people, just having a good time. So, Sal was a character always. Sal enjoyed the Buena Vista Cafe. Sal enjoyed a good time. Sal was delightful and fun to be with. And I honor him with Fun Story today and invite him to join us, to join me, to join Bob McAvoy for the day, to tell us stories and for us to remember good times we had with him, and for his wisdom and how perturbed he would be with some of the things in the way that the world is today. But it sure would be fun to have a dish of pasta with him, or to go to Don Ramon's Mexican restaurant. I should tell one more story about Sal. You know, Sal had, and I may have told this to some of you before, but I had so many experiences with Sal. And of course, Sal was raised Catholic. And towards the end of his life, when he knew he had AIDS, the Catholicism wasn't doing it for him. And so he was going around trying different churches, different religions, and asked me if I would go with him. And I reluctantly, because I wasn't going to church in those days, said yes. And in any way, this one Sunday, we went to the Lutheran church in San Francisco by St. Mary's Cathedral. There's an old Lutheran church right there beside it. And we go in this Lutheran church, and it's a hot day in San Francisco, which isn't the usual. And it's not air conditioned. And this Lutheran church is packed. And we're going through the Apostles' Creed, and we're all standing. And we go through the priest goes to, and I believe in the Holy Catholic Church. And Sal faints in the pew next to me. Just passes right out in the middle of, I believe in the Holy Catholic Church. Well, of course, you know, I mean, everybody turns and looks, and I would say that compared to the age of our congregation, we have a young congregation compared to the congregation that was at this Lutheran church. And yes, Sue Barton, that's what I said. And everybody turned around, but kept going with the Apostles' Creed. And I'm there, Sal, because I knew he was going to be embarrassed. As was I. And this little lady comes over and said, "We've called an ambulance." And they're, "Oh, no," because Sal had passed out on me before. I said, Sal, come on now, wake up. They've called an ambulance. That's all I had to say. Sal sat bolt upright. What happened? They called an ambulance, stood up, and walked out of the church. I was still standing there. Excused me and made my way out of the pew and out of this packed Lutheran church. Sal Dolor was always full of tricks and good memories. So I invite you today to do some things to bring some loved ones. Thank you for listening to my stories about Sal Dolor. I appreciate them and I enjoyed telling it. Thank you. I invite you to, thank you, to do your own, whatever it takes to set up your time to welcome whoever you'd like to welcome into your home today. Have fun, maybe still in costume, and set up a little altar, bring some fun things together, gather some food together for your lunch, and sit down around the altar and invite that person in and enjoy food with them, enjoy some conversation. Bring out some candies and enjoy that. And life is for living. So let's live life today. Let's live life every day. Let's not mourn and let's not be afraid, but let's honor this human experience and honor the spiritual beings that we truly are. Have a great Day of the Dead. Thank you for joining us today.